A long, comprehensive speech with some big-ticket announcements. As expected, the Prime Minister has thrown a few surprises in there.
Well, yes, but the larger theme of this speech was the Aatma Nirbhar Bharat campaign that the government has launched. Self-reliance, an announcement that was made when 20 lakh crore rupees package was announced in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. I guess the Prime Minister is only taking that message forward and using the pious platform of the Red Fort on the occasion of Independence Day to reiterate that message. So I think it will be safe to conclude that this was a reiteration of his Aatma Nirbhar mission. Of course, a number of things that he has touched upon. The most important is where he starts at the very beginning of his speech by telling the reasons why we should be Aatma Nirbhar. And for that, he used a phrase where he said, for how much long will we keep sending raw materials to the world and keep importing finished goods? That was the core philosophy behind, having or getting or being Aatma Nirbhar. We spoke about certain challenges as far as Aatma Nirbhar are concerned, but then also said the coronavirus crisis itself, the corona crisis itself has proven to not just Indians but to the world that if we choose to be Aatma Nirbhar, we can actually achieve those goals. For instance, the production of N95 masks, PPE kits and ventilators. It's very interesting the point that you mentioned, Sonal, about him taking Make in India a step forward, and I guess through the course of the next few years, it's going to be very obvious that this will become the slogan from Make in India, and there will be many who will puncture holes in the claims of how successful Make in India has been. But obviously the government feels that they've been able to achieve a lot of what was actually desired to take it to the next level. And what is the next level? It is Make for the World, the point that you mentioned. So, the example that he gives for this transition is coronavirus, where we are not just producing N95 PPE and ventilators for us, but we are also exporting them for use of the world. So will this be the next philosophy for the government? It's very clear that the Prime Minister has given a vision that from Make in India we have to move to Make for the World. However, I would like to continuously mention over here, as we've said in the past also, that there are many vocal critics of how successful or non-successful or a failure in some cases, as some political parties like to call it, the Make in India mission has actually been. Now, another important point that you did mention that the Prime Minister spoke about was 1,000 days and how a digital divide shall be bridged in this country, where you will have 6 lakh villages that will have optical fiber laid. Now, 1,000 days means 3 years. So the Prime Minister has made an announcement that in the next 3 years, almost all villages in India will have an optical fiber connection and thus high-speed internet. Now, this would also come up with its own set of challenges. There will be a comprehensive cyber-security policy that will be required, which also he has announced. Now, I feel, Sonal, that this is a very important point that the Prime Minister has mentioned, especially in the context not of online transactions, but online education. If you recall, just a short while ago, in his speech, the Prime Minister mentioned that online classes have become a culture in this country and we adapted to them quickly. The Prime Minister must also be aware of the massive digital divide that exists in this country. We have many children who have been cut off from the education system because of this digital divide. So those who could adapt have adapted, but because we do not have the infrastructure, because many students do not even have the requisite hardware to participate in online education, there are many who are silently suffering as of this moment in this country. So while we do have a long-term vision of 1,000 days to connect all the villages with optical fiber, the real challenge is now, and I guess it would have been great if the Prime Minister would have addressed this crucial point on how does he plan to address this big digital divide. Right here on NDTV, Sonal, you must have seen the reports filed in by Sneha, by Sam Daniel, by Alok Pandey of how the digital divide has created a huge problem, so much so that many students are committing suicide. There are deaths by suicide that are being reported all over the country in various pockets. Why? Because students are are being cut off from the education system, and they feel that their parents are not being able to support this new form of online education.
Saket, lots
in many
to talk
parts,
about actually
you do not have
in this
the
entire
required
speech
internet
of the Prime
speed.
Minister. Lots of topics to touch upon. We also have Nalini Singh and Smita joining us this morning for more on this. Let's take it one step at a time. Let's talk about the first most burning issue, COVID. Something that everybody was looking forward to. There was earlier talks that he will finally announce a vaccine comes in. If you talk about those issues, first up, big takeaways from the Prime Minister's speech on how the COVID pandemic will be looked at moving forward. Smita, to you first.
Yes, he did say, I mean, what everybody has been worried about and many politicians have also spoken about is that, you know, when the vaccine comes, will they have access? It was the same kind of anxiety that people had when tests came in first, if you remember, Sonal, that when in March everybody was worried that if I get it or if I have symptoms, how do I get myself tested? Because that was a major issue. As far as March was concerned, everybody was worried, where do I get the masks from? Where do I get the PPEs from? Especially our COVID warriors. Now that issue was sorted out. And today from the Red Fort, he promised Indians that a map is already ready as to when and how the vaccines will reach every Indian, even one who is sitting in the remotest part of the country. So that he tried to reassure that if anybody has any anxiety in the country, that it will be only the privileged few who will have first access to the vaccine. That ashanka, that worry should be gotten away with. I think that was very important. He did of course mention, Sonal, that you know that we didn't have the N95 masks, we had to import that, and today we are Aatma Nirbhar. Aatma Nirbhar, or self-sufficient, has been a thread which began from literally the first paragraph of his speech to the very end. In 2014, if you remember, it was Make in India, and today it was be local for vocal. I think that is the go local for vocal is the slogan.
So safe
now,
to
is
say
it
at
just
this
a slogan
point
that he's been given
with the
from
underlining,
the
with the underlining thought of Aatma Nirbhar, with the underlining thought of being self-reliant, he touched upon various topics. He talked about COVID, he talked about women empowerment, he talked about connecting with the farmers, middle class, he touched upon international relationship as well, from LAC to LOC, Jammu and Kashmir, very, very comprehensive. So I just want to go, you know, step by step to all these topics to understand that. We've spoken about the COVID crisis. When it comes to women, I saw one of the biggest things that we've actually heard today from the Prime Minister is the subsidized sanitary napkins being available, which is a big, big win. And I see both the women smiling really bright on this one. Nalini, you want to share your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it was the very, very first time that I have ever heard a Prime Minister say that sanitary napkins will be available for 1 rupee per sanitary napkin, and from the ramparts of the Red Fort. And for this, one has to say that it is something which is very reassuring, because it means that what the people need, in this case, what our women need, our young girls need, that this is being spoken about not in behind closed doors, but from the ramparts of the Red Fort on Independence Day.
It's not just the value to the sanitary napkin, but the fact that he spoke about it, the breaking of taboo, which is...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sonal, also about women and how, what he has done in terms of giving them cash benefit, even if it is 500 rupees a month, etc. And of course, many other things about how they are now going to be in the forces. But when we talk about Aatma Nirbhar, self-reliance, which is, which was really, as has said earlier, a huge part of his speech, and underlying thread also in this word stream. I would say that he was, to the public at large, he was convincing. He was also boosting the self-confidence of Indians who were listening. And at the same time, he was talking about reforms all along.
Right.
I would say that, in this, all the right buttons were pressed. He said that the world will benefit if India is strong. Now, the only question is, this far is great, but making the connection between India being strong and India being self-reliant in terms of economics, that to me, at least, I wasn't able to make that connection convincingly. Because, there is technology and expertise is what puts you on top of the world. The world will come to you if you have the technology, if you have the expertise, not because if you have a slogan of Aatma Nirbhar.
So we'll talk about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you for the moment. I quickly have to slip into a break. We'll be back and we'll discuss the entire speech at length. And like we said, we'll go, from one link to the other. But the underlining theme of that entire speech has been Aatma Nirbhar. Stay tuned. All the analysis of the Prime Minister's speech coming up on the other side. Welcome back. The Prime Minister just concluded his an hour-and-a-half long speech where, with the underlining theme of Aatma Nirbhar Bharat, he spoke about from LOC to LAC. He spoke about making India more self-reliant and in various sectors and how. We spoke about in the section of COVID-19, what is the aspect that he holds for India and the future that he holds, what is he seeing in the coming days for women as well. But one big highlight of his speech today has been the announcement on the National Digital Health Mission. Smita, do you want to talk about that first up? A big push where he's saying there'll be one national health ID that is going to belong to every Indian, and that should, in Prime Minister's words, should be path-breaking when it comes to the health infrastructure for the country.
I think, Sonal, COVID has made us realize more than anything the anxiety in every Indian's mind, whether, even those who didn't have, say, health insurance, which is a major chunk of your country. Suddenly the realization that I don't have the money, even if I have a fixed deposit account, even if I have a savings bank account, if I've saved up for my children's education, my EMIs, I still don't have enough money for my health, health needs, if at all I get COVID. So this is something that anxiety to do away with, to say that the state is with you, that there's going to be an ID card, there's going to be something that the state is planning for you, is something I think that everybody wanted to hear, that the health facilities are going to be ramped up in these COVID times, because everybody knows that hence going forward, that is 6 more months to at least a year, we are going to be stuck with some form or the other of the coronavirus. So it is worrisome. But before I conclude, I must say, Sonal, we are 3 women on this panel. Nalini has already said, spoken about that the Prime Minister spoke about the sanitary napkin issue from the ramparts of the Red Fort. I think it's extremely important for all of us, for women of, my generation, your generation, and before us, our mothers and grandmothers, who, if we went to buy sanitary napkins, if you went to a chemist shop, he wrapped it up in newspaper, in black paper, or anything like that. You never spoke about it in your drawing rooms. Your fathers, grandfathers, of course, never. And for the Prime Minister to speak today from the Red Fort has taken away that taboo. Just like in 2014, he spoke about open defecation, something that we need to be ashamed of, but change. Same way, today he spoke about sanitary napkins and said that it will be cheaper ones will be available. So that hygiene aspect of women's hygiene is something I'm so happy that came out from the Red Fort, not from anywhere else, not from women politicians, but from a male politician, a male Prime Minister from the Red Fort.
Well, thumbs up to Prime Minister. In fact, he also spoke about the marriageable age of girls, but we'll come back to all of that in just a bit. We have another quick break to take. Back in a moment.
So very quickly, in under 4 minutes, I'm going to tell you the 10 things that stood out as far as this speech is concerned. Point number 1, the overarching theme of Aatma Nirbhar, where he said that how much and how long will we keep sending raw materials to the world to keep importing finished goods. I think that was an important point that he made. He also spoke in the context of coronavirus, where he said that India can not just produce but also export. He gave the example of how, in the case of a crisis, India manufactured N95, PPE kits and ventilators, and did not just supply to satisfy its need and its requirement, but is also exporting. So that's a point that he made. Point number 3, and this is very crucial, Sonal, and we were talking about this earlier, is how that we can see a shift between make in India to make for the world. And I think that's the example that he gave of coronavirus. Many people would criticize how successful a Make in India has been, but the Prime Minister has clearly decided to take it to the next level of making for the world, but making in India. Point number 4 is very crucial and something that NDTV has been reporting continuously, and that is the point on online classes, where he says that online classes have become a new culture. He says to take this further, for digital penetration in the next 1,000 days, 6 lakh villages will have optical fiber. That means in 3 years they will have optical fiber. But we also know and are aware of a huge digital divide in this country where students are going without education, and that crisis is happening right now. So while we have a plan in the long term, there was no mention of how the Prime Minister chooses to address this massive education crisis in the short term. He spoke about the national education policy also. Point number 5 is the National Digital Health Mission, where he talked about digital cards, health for all. I think this was a very, very important intervention that was made by the Prime Minister using digital technology for health, which was touched upon by our experts as well. Point number 6 is on Jammu and Kashmir. Remember, this is 1 year of the abrogation of Article 370. His second speech post the abrogation, where he said the delimitation exercise in Jammu and Kashmir is presently on and soon. And he reiterated the fact that Jammu and Kashmir will be a state which will be equipped with the Chief Minister, ministers, MLAs, all of them will be chosen. So he has reiterated that point that it will not remain a union territory constantly or continuously. And now for a very crucial point number 7, where the Prime Minister talks about aggressors from outside. I think he made a very, very significant point in the context of China, where he said that we have seen whenever we have faced adversity from the LOC or the LAC, our soldiers have given back in the same coin, in the same language. A very powerful message from the ramparts of the Red Fort to China that has been made by the Prime Minister. Point number 8, again, Sonal, is very, very significant because it is a sort of a corollary to point number 7, where he spoke about not just the immediate neighborhood, but an extended neighborhood. He says that it is very important that you not just share your borders, but also share minds with your neighbors. So he's redefining what neighborhood actually means for India, where he's extending our cooperation to South Asia, to also West Asia. A lot of these points that are being mentioned, eastern part of the world, look east policy, all of that was mentioned. The concept of extended neighborhood was spoken about. Point number 9, where he spoke about the last 5 years, that is Modi 1 being all about fulfilling India's need, and the next 5 years, that is Modi 2, being all about fulfilling India's ambitions. I think that's an important point that he has made. And point number 10, we were expecting that this will find a mention, and it did in the speech of the Prime Minister, where he spoke about the Ram Temple. In the context of the Ram Temple, he said the fact that there will be peace, unity and coordination in the backdrop of the historic decision around the Ram Temple and the construction is the foundation stone for India being Aatma Nirbhar. So these are the 10 crucial points from the Prime Minister's 90-minute long speech.